Hey everyone, happy Sunday to you. I hope all is well. We're cruising right through this thing. I know I say that every week, but we really are. Well, this is the 3/4 way mark at the end of this week. You have 4 assignments left after this paper. So as the semester has gone on, this last 4 weeks is no different. DB quiz, DB paper. Your last paper is super simple, though, I'll tell you that. But this is your last external meeting this week. You have a choice between Celebrate Recovery, Refuge Recovery, or Recovery Dharma. Those links should all be, where you know to find them in the LCDC resources. So here's a little bit of insight into these programs. Celebrate Recovery is a Christian 12-step program where I know, like, for example, AA tells you can separate spirituality and religion, and I thoroughly buy into that personally. That you find this higher power, God as you understand him. Now, again, make no mistake, that program was taken directly from the Bible, right? At some point, they changed all that to be all-inclusive. Excuse me. That said, Celebrate Recovery doesn't change that. They say it's God, the Christian God. And here's the biblical principles behind each step. So they're all in. This is what they do. So obviously it's not going to be a fit for every client, but it is going to be a good fit for some. And it's important you know about it, right? So they're always at churches, has been my experience. They're a little longer, I think, hour and a half, maybe. I forget exactly, but they're a little longer. But they start out as a group, kind of like in a treatment setting, right? In an education group where you start out in an IOP group, I guess I should say. You start out with everybody there, then you break off into your groups. This is no different than that, right? You start out, there's some kind of testimonial. Sometimes there's like a potluck dinner thing at a lot of them. They have their announcements, their testimonials, whatever it is they do together. Then they break off into gender-specific groups. And unlike traditional 12-step work where they use the labels alcoholic or addict, they don't use that at Celebrate. Where, for example, AA has what they call a singleness of purpose. A desire to stop drinking is why you come here. Narcotics Anonymous is you have a desire to stop using substances, right? That's why you come here. Celebrate is a little different. They're more like Smart Recovery, and they don't care why you come. They believe you can have, I think they use the phrase hurt, habits, or hang-ups. You're welcome here. If you have those things, well, all of us have those things, right? And so this is where I would caution you on your own bias. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that from another class I teach that it came up. Because, no matter what you believe is good or bad or like or don't like, it's not about that. It's about our clients and what they are willing to do and what's a good fit for them. So be open-minded to these processes, no matter your beliefs, because they can benefit someone. And the reason I say that is I've touched on this before where, AA's singleness of purpose or NA's purpose is that there's nothing like one. I'm just going to stick with AA so I don't have to keep going AA, NAA. I'm talking about all of those, right? AA, NA, CA, CMA, right? AAA, MBA, all of them. There's value in that. There's nothing like one alcoholic helping another. Agreed. Nothing like that. That's what makes those support groups so valuable. However, there's also great value in learning from others with other experiences, even if lifestyles and events are different. Because as clinicians, this is what you're going to work with. Right? This whole antiquated idea that nothing can help me like an alcoholic or an addict, well, that's nonsense. Right? I think there's great value in that. 100% great value in that. However, I've shared the story about a young man I had that was drinking. He said, Dan, I tried to go to one of those NA meetings and I just couldn't relate. I said, I'd never been to a drug den before, and I laughed, and I was like, bro, nobody's been to a drug den since like 1978. Anyways, so he said, I just can't relate to that lifestyle. I said, yeah, no, the lifestyle, no. Right? The lifestyle couldn't be more different if some dude's at the dope house hitting the pipe and you're over here passed out drunk. Yet, no, those lifestyles are very different. However, what's most likely very similar, if not the same, is the feelings driving that behavior. And as clinicians, that's what we want to get to. Stop focusing on the event so much as the feelings behind what's driving that behavior, right? And so this is a good segue here into refuge, because as Buddhism principles, Buddhism believes that suffering is inevitable. Life is suffering, right? There's going to be events, natural disasters, car accidents, divorce, death, all the things in our lives that are just life stuff, right? Passed over for promotions, boyfriend or girlfriend cheat on us, like all the life stuff, right? Sickness, all the things. We assign meaning to them is what they believe. And I buy into that philosophy. That's basic CBT work. If I change my perception on something, it changes my behavior, changing the way I feel, right? So as a clinician, that process is of great value. So I don't care if it's quote one alcoholic to another. There's value. Again, there's value in that. Don't get me wrong. I that was very helpful for me personally. Right? But there's value in these other things too. And as clinicians, we need to see the beauty in that process, right? Like if you and I are driving in a car, right? We get in a fender bender. I could step out of that car and be completely traumatized. I'm not getting back in this boy. Like, it's too much. I'm scared. You could get out of the car and be like, suck it up, bro. It's a fender bender. Get back in. Which one of us are right? We're both right. Right? It's how we process. The event is the fender bender. So it's not the event that's the problem, because that's just the event. It's how we process the event. And that is an intro into trauma work. Trauma is an experience, not an event. And that's why these other perceptions and these alternative avenues matter, and they make sense, and they have great value. And I bring this up because I teach at University of St. Thomas, and they're a week ahead of us here at Lone Star. So they just did their Celebrate a Refuge meeting, and one of the students in their paper wrote about, she said, I got to admit, I was kind of rolling my eyes halfway listening, like this is nonsense. I don't buy into this, blah, blah, blah. And eventually heard something that resonated with her, and, went on to really say this meeting was a life changer, but more than anything, life changing in that it showed me about my own biases. And that's something we need to be looking at as clinicians, because in this industry, as much as anywhere else in any other form, any other industry, we have biases, right? We do. And if you think you don't, that's a bias in itself, I think, right? But that's that we get programmed, pun intended, to look at what recovery is in a certain way. I think I've shown you over this semester that recovery, there's not one path here. There's a million different ways to get it. And who am I to say what it is? That's pretty arrogant of me as a therapist to say, I know what's best for you and you need to do it this way. It's arrogant, and it's not conducive to a therapeutic alliance at all, right? Do I have clients that come in my office and say, I want you to tell me? And I'll say, well, let's talk about this. Like, what do you feel? I'm always putting it back on them, because at the end of the day, they're the experts on them, right? So that said, a little bit about refuge real quickly to circle back is they start out their meetings with 20 minutes of meditation. Some people love it, some people don't. I have several people I see currently in refuge and are just thriving. And I have several people in AA, and a few in SMART, and a few in NA, and they're all thriving. So again, all these programs are good. But this is your last meeting, so to attend outside. But one thing I want to encourage you to consider, I've said this from the jump, is whichever meetings you've attended for these assignments, my hope is you'll look past the assignment piece and attend these other ones. That's what makes us, it's our responsibility. It's what makes us good LCDCs. We need to know about these programs, and not just what other people say, right? Because I can tell you, when I worked at treatment for all those years, I was at the office and couldn't really get out, right? So I had to really take other people's opinions, and then eventually over the years, it formed to be my own opinion of these places. As a result, when I started marketing for the treatment center, and was able to get out in the business development role and meet people and tour those facilities and talk to people and learn their philosophies, I learned a lot of things I thought weren't good were really not, they were good actually. So it's important we form our own opinion so we can, with our own information and our own experiences, so we can genuinely educate our clients. Yeah, so it's a huge thing. I hope you attend all the meetings at least once or twice outside of this, because look, as LCDCs, we're always learning. We're always, quote, doing assignments, meaning we're always trying to grow. We get stuck more in this industry, I think, than anywhere else in our antiquated way of thinking, right? And I'm not saying it's always bad because, excuse me, it's, you know, there's a reason programs like AA has been around almost 100 years. Yeah. I live by those principles every day. I teach my clients. I use those principles in some form or fashion every day with my clients. They have great, great value. Even though they're antiquated and from the 30s, they still have merit today, 100%. However, we can't say, we'll just dig our heels in and say, because this is what we know, that this new thing doesn't work. Because I'll tell you this, our industry is changing, and it's changing rapid, right? Some things we're slow to get on board with, and other things we're moving like this, like AI, right? Like AI notes. 5 years ago, that would have been unheard of. Like a whole client privacy issue, and it's still a thing. You want to split a room full of clinicians, talk about AI, right? Used to be Suboxone, still will split a room of clinicians. And I'll tell you, I'll share this. Early on in my career, I was anti-medication on that. But why? It doesn't make sense. I'd rather have one person alive, I'd rather have 10 people alive on Suboxone than one dead on opiates. I mean, again, there's guidelines and rules and regulations and all the things. And, you know, I don't think that that's the sole answer. I think anything without the recovery piece, meaning there's no one pill, there's no one group, there's no one counselor, there's no one doctor, there's no one treatment center, there's no one thing that makes this better. Right? It's not if I just call my sponsor. I know what I did wrong. I didn't call my sponsor. So if I just call my sponsor, it's fine. I know what I didn't do wrong. I didn't go to meetings. So if I just go to meetings, I know what I did wrong if I just read the book. I know what I did wrong if I just go to this other program. I know what I did wrong if I just continue with psychiatry or therapy. No, it's all of those things. And it's a constant series of choices that our clients make, just like we make every day, right? So, yeah, guys, we're honored to do this work, but it is a work, and it's our responsibility to be educated on how these meetings go and to be open-minded towards other things than we know, right? And not be stuck in antiquated thinking, because that just does our clients a disservice. Again, I still use ideals and philosophies from the 30s. Hell, from the beginning of time for that matter, right? Like Buddhism's been around a long time. Christianity's been around a long time. I use all of those things. I pull from everywhere, right? And it's just, how can we use our personalities and our skill sets and our clinical knowledge and education to make that work for our client, help motivate our client. So yeah, guys, good stuff. Again, last meeting next week. You have a super easy week, just a summary of your paper, and then you're down to your last quiz 4 on implementing strategies to facilitate strong therapeutic alliance and fostering successful change. That's a mouthful right there, because that's our job. That is our number one job. We develop this therapeutic alliance. Right? I can't choose for my clients. I've said this from the jump. I don't choose for my clients. This is why, whether I like Refuge, whether I like Celebrate, whether I like AA, NACA, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what I like. It's what they like. So we want to just build that relationship so we can have these conversations, right? When they ask, well, what's your opinion on AA? What's your opinion on Refuge or SMART or Celebrate? Well, here's what I know about it, because I'm educated about the programs, because I've been to them. I've experienced them, so there's value there. But my opinion is, here's how they work. Here's what they believe. Do you think that would be helpful for you in some way? Let's discuss that. How is what I've just told you, what I've just educated you on about the logistics of these programs, the philosophies and ideals, how is that helpful for you potentially? How do you see that working in your life? What do you think the potential pitfalls in your life? You notice I didn't one time say, well, I love it, or I don't like it as much. I didn't say that one time. I don't want to influence my client's decision. I'm not choosing for them. I'm educating them so they can make a choice. Big difference there, right? And that's our jobs. So we get wrapped up in our opinion, and we need to really work on that and be mindful of that. So yeah, guys, you guys as a whole are crushing it in this course, and I'm real proud of you as a whole. This is one of the better classes I've had where people are on point. They're getting the APA, like all that stuff's good. And APA again is just going to help you in the future. That's all that is. Anyway, then the last 2 weeks you have your last DB, and it's where we wrap this whole class up in a bow with the chapter 5. We stay in chapter 5, where it's matching clients to self-help groups. Well, it makes sense, right, that we would end with that. And then you have the last week, week 16, you have a personal reflection paper. You don't have to use resources in that paper. You can tell me you love the class. You can tell me you less than love the class. That's fine. But what I'm looking for in that is really, and we'll talk more about it as we get closer, but it's really just a summary of what you've learned and how you think it may be helpful for you, and more importantly, how you think you'll implement it with clients and that kind of thing. So again, we'll get there. This week you got the last meeting, and I look forward to reading your papers. As always, guys, have a great week. Be watching those points and your grade, whatever grade you want. And if I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out.